All right. Welcome to another episode of In Conversation. On this episode, I'm joined by Judd Kessler, the inaugural Howard Marks Endowed Professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School. A leading scholar in behavioral economics, market design, and public policy, Judd operates at the intersection of theory and practice, examining how incentives, systems, and behavioral forces shape decision-making and real-world outcomes. A graduate of Harvard and the University of Cambridge, he is the author of Lucky by Design, a great book. I just read it, and was the 2021 recipient of Wharton's Vernon L. Smith Ascending Scholar Prize.
We stand today
a date which will live in infamy.
I have a dream.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Judd, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for making time for this, and I know it's going to be a great conversation.
Thanks so much. I'm very happy to be here.
So, on this podcast, what I try to do is take our audience out a ways, zoom out, and look at the bigger picture and help understand how forces are shaping the world we're living in. It's such a complicated world and seems to get more complex every day with social media and AI, which I'll get into. But you talk about in Lucky by Design this concept of hidden markets. Most people assume, I think, they lose out on things like the job, the deal, the opportunity because someone better or faster came along. And I think you make the point that there are underlying forces at work and systems at work that actually dictate outcomes.
Yep.
Talk about hidden markets, define them if you would for our audience, and we'll get into it.
Yeah. So hidden markets is this concept that I use to describe any situation where there's a scarce resource that lots of people want, and we don't just let price adjust to decide who gets it. So I'm an economist. I teach econ classes to undergrads and MBA students at Wharton. And in our econ classes, we tell students supply equals demand. If you've taken an econ class or had the misfortune of spending time with an economist, you will have heard that.
My father is an economist, so believe me, I have.
Oh my, yeah. So we pound this message in that the way that we allocate scarce resources is by letting price adjust. And that's what we are saying when we say supply equals demand. We say, if there was more people who wanted something than we could serve, the price would rise. And as it did, folks who had previously wanted the thing would decide, it's not worth it anymore. And folks who maybe on the other side of the market, sellers might kind of be induced in and produce more when the price rises. And we teach that because that explains lots of markets. That explains how lots of markets operate. But it's not the whole story. There are many markets where price does not adjust, where we leave what economists call excess demand, more people that want the thing than there are available to serve. And we need to have other rules that decide who gets access to those scarce resources. And anytime we're in that situation, we can talk about why they develop. And sometimes it's the seller keeping the price low. Sometimes it's society saying, we don't want prices at all. Sometimes it's, a two-sided market where you don't just decide who to hire based on who accepts the lowest salary. You have other motives at play. In all of these cases, there are underlying rules that you have to identify, you have to understand them, and then you can develop a strategy to succeed.
I love the way you use your kids and the ice cream cone from Trader Joe's in the book. The simplicity of the example. Talk about that if you would.
Yeah, I mean, this is when I approach these hidden markets, I try to understand, okay, what makes for a good hidden market? What makes for a bad hidden market? When we are trying to allocate scarce resources and we're not letting price do the job, what should we be trying to achieve? And I have a framework that I call the 3 E's. It's equity, efficiency, and ease for market participants. And these words mean kind of, I think for the most part, what you think they're going to mean. And I'll get to the kids in the ice cream cone in a second, because that's how I try to kind of flesh these out. Equity is about fairness. Like, if we want to treat everybody equally. So I have 3 kids, and if they all want the same ice cream cone for dessert, and it's something that, they can't share, it has to go to one of them, and there's only one left. Right? An equitable allocation would be treating all 3 of them equally. It would not always give the ice cream cone to my son, who's the oldest. Then there's efficiency. So that is, are we putting our scarce resources to the best possible use? Are we wasting them, or are they going to the kind of person who values them the most? So in the case of the ice cream cone, if I gave it to nobody because, they all 3 of them wanted it and only had one, right, that would not be efficient, because everybody would be getting a kind of less desirable dessert that night. So that kind of is not great on efficiency. What turns out is hard. It's hard to identify like who wants it the most. And here, wanting it might be the difference between how much they want that ice cream cone and whatever the next best dessert option is for them, their second choice. But that is the goal of an allocation on efficiency, is like, are we putting the scarce resources to their best use? And then the third one is ease for market participants. And this is one that when you are in a hidden market, or when you are designing a hidden market, which many folks do kind of even when they don't think about themselves as being market designers, they are actually doing this. We often ignore the ease for market participants. So if I made the kids write an essay about how much they really wanted the ice cream cone, and that was the kind of way I was going to decide who got access to it, that's not easy. That requires a lot of work, and for an uncertain outcome, right? Two of them will write an essay and end up with nothing. And so that's not ideal for an allocation mechanism. And so when you start translating it outside of, I have one ice cream cone to give to 3 kids, to like, all right, I want to get access to a live event ticket. And, we're standing online in front of the box office for hours to see who's going to, whoever's first is going to get the best tickets. That's a case where it's not easy for market participants. They're all there collectively wasting, hundreds of hours as they wait. It might be efficient in the sense of, if I really, really want the thing, maybe, I'm willing to stand longer, so that, efficiency in the who gets the tickets, like maybe the most diehard fans get the tickets. But there's no guarantee of that. If I really like the band, but I have to be home watching my kids, I can't, be standing online for 6 hours. It's going to exclude me.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's not equitable. If there's some people who like don't feel safe sleeping on the street overnight, then they're not going to be able to have access to the tickets. And so you can see these 3 concepts coming into play when you're actually trying to allocate a scarce resource even outside of your kitchen.
Yeah. So I think about it a lot, and I was thinking about, as I was reading the book, the context of what happens inside an organization, the way people succeed in an organization. And every organization has what I'll call unwritten rules: who has influence, when to push, how decisions actually get made. There are systems, and sometimes you have your own systems, but some people get them, some people don't. Some people play the game better than others. Like, I think about it a lot in terms of, I play golf, and people build real relationships on a golf course. But as the leader of a business, if my business functioned in a way, which it absolutely does not, where that's the only thing that mattered as far as getting ahead and like allowing real relationships to be built, I'd be biasing my organization in a very negative direction.
Yeah, who has the best short game?
Yeah, exactly. So how does CEOs think about navigating that and accounting for it, and telling the difference between real talent and someone who's just good at playing the game?
Yeah, so this is where thinking about the 3 E's, I think, becomes very valuable. If you are the CEO of a firm, or you're a manager leading folks, you are in control of a bunch of hidden markets. You're deciding who gets access to that promotion, who gets to work on which teams, who gets assigned which tasks. These are scarce resources. There might be very desirable opportunities. And you want to make sure that you're designing systems, or if you're making decisions yourself, you're at least keeping in mind the 3 E's of equity, efficiency, and ease. So equity, because if you limit who has access to scarce resources in ways that are not desirable. So, if you say you have to be good at golf to have an opportunity to succeed in this organization, that's obviously going to be a problem. It's going to mechanically exclude a bunch of folks who don't have that kind of unrelated skill. And as you pointed out in your question, it's also going to be bad for efficiency, because there's no guarantee that the folks who are best at succeeding in these given roles are going to also, be folks who happen to be good at golf. But this, and we're picking on golf, but it's not just that, right? You can design systems where you say, oh, we're only going to reward, or we're going to particularly reward people who go out and get a lot of business. And that's great if you're good at, sales and good at identifying clients, like that, there's a good role for you. But if we just focus on that, we exclude other factors of the job, you're going to end up with people in leadership who might not have all of the sets of skills that are necessary.
Yep.
And then the other one is ease. When you are a manager, you're running a firm, if the market participants are your employees, then when you make things difficult for them, either they have to go through an ordeal like, a bunch of extra steps or red tape, or spend a lot of time kind of lobbying individual people who they think can help them. Like, that's time they could be spending doing more productive stuff. And when you make systems opaque and difficult to navigate, right, that creates uncertainty and stress. And, like best case, people are able to navigate that. Worst case, you get a bunch more turnover because people are thinking to themselves, why am I sticking around at a firm where, it's not clear if I have a path to promotion?
Sure.
And so these are the things you want to think about when you're in that role.
Yep. So another thing that I think leaders think about a lot is metrics. You need metrics to run an organization. But the moment you publish a leaderboard, you've created a hidden, or maybe not so hidden, market around that. And how do you measure what matters without the measurement itself distorting things like teamwork and collaboration?
Yeah, I mean, this is real tough, because it is the case that the expression "you make what you measure." Right. If you start saying, all right, the thing that we care about is, sales, or the thing that we care about is, number of cases won, if you're a trial lawyer, say, right, like, then people will start to gravitate towards those tasks, right? If that's what you are rewarding me for, I am going to, both because of the financial incentive, like if it is the case that I get a bonus or promotion based on that, but also the way you described it, like the social incentive. I want to be good at my job. I want to work hard. I want to succeed. If you're telling me that the way to succeed is to focus on this one metric above all else, like that is going to be what I will gravitate towards. And so what that means is you have to be very, very careful about what it is that you list as the thing that you're trying to get people to gun for. Because if it is a individual level, something that I can do on my own without help from anybody else, and maybe I look better if other people do worse, that is going to create terrible incentives within your firm, because folks are going to, instead of trying to help each other out, they're going to be looking over their shoulder and afraid of other people maybe sabotaging them, and you get really bad outcomes. So I think if you're in this position, thinking about what are the things that you actually want to reward and making those clear. So as an academic, we are rewarded for a bunch of stuff in the tenure and promotion process or in the field, and choices that have been made by folks at particular institutions or more broadly help to ensure to a certain extent that we are more collaborative than we might otherwise be. So if I write a paper with you, we both get credit for that paper as if we kind of both wrote it fully. That means that we can work productively on a team and both benefit from the shared production. If instead, the way that we kind of calculated success in academic publishing was we said, okay, we're going to, if I worked with Howard, we each get a half a credit, right? That's going to lead me to think, oh, I'm actually going to just try to work a lot more by myself. And I'm not going to mentor younger academics. I'm not going to work with my PhD students because they're going to be dead weight relative to what I can do on my own, right? And the whole system breaks down because of the specific way that we've decided to measure success. Because we say, everybody gets full credit for a project we work on together.
Yeah.
That creates other dynamics. I'm on a paper with 9 people and that, that might not be efficient, but there is a sense that we can, design the systems so that we can achieve what we want, like team production and productive workplaces.
Yeah. And can something as simple as words in a performance appraisal correct for that? Or is it really more the day-to-day, the things you stress about, what you value, the way you talk within an organization? And how, you call yourself an academic, but you've done a tremendous amount of research on real world application and actually built systems. But how much of this is thinking like really in terms of system design versus the way you think about the world and talk and kind of weave it into the day to day? I hope that makes sense.
No, I think that's a deep question. I think it's both. I think you can't just give lip service to things because your employees understand that that's BS, for lack of a better term. If you say, oh, we really value team efforts and working together, but then the only people who ever get assigned the good projects or ever get promoted are the people who are succeeding on one, very clear metric that's individualistic, like, number of deals closed or number of, sales made or whatever it is for your organization, then folks realize like, oh, they're not actually rewarding the kind of collaborative work. So, I think they are complementary in the sense of if I talk about, my corporate culture is that we value workers doing X, Y, and Z. And then we also reward X, Y, and Z and not just Z, right? Then I think you actually can get success. If you are doing one and not the other, I think people realize pretty quickly that, it's that they shouldn't be paying attention to what you say. They should only be paying attention to who you promote, who you assign to different tasks, the actual outcomes.
Yeah. It's interesting. A couple of years ago, I had a recruitment where I was looking to bring somebody into the organization. There were other firms that the person was looking at. I knew we were below market on not below market, below what other firms were going to offer this individual. But I also knew that we were the better platform for the individual. And I very consciously, I'd say designed a system to test whether she could see the fact that we were the better opportunity, or was she going to chase the dollars? And she chose very rationally to chase the dollars. That's very human. But it also, I was not unhappy with the result, because if she couldn't see the benefit of leaving a couple of bucks on the table to take the better opportunity, then she wasn't going to be the right fit for us anyway.
This is great because one set of hidden markets that we haven't talked a ton about yet are what I call two-sided markets or choose me markets. These are markets where success in the market, a good outcome, is a match between two market participants, usually on different side of the market. So, an employee and an employer. But the same logic that I'm about to talk through works for someone like looking for a date on the dating market, or somebody deciding which academic institution to join, right? You don't just say, I want to go to University of Pennsylvania. University of Pennsylvania has to also admit you. And we admit, people, based on a bunch of criteria. And the thing that you are describing is one of the things that I think folks miss when they look at these hidden markets, or maybe not miss, but kind of undervalue, which is that a successful match is about long-term outcomes. So when I am thinking about hiring somebody, I am not just looking for somebody who I think is phenomenal, the best, the highest caliber in all dimensions, because I might be worried that that person will get lots of other offers and I won't be able to, I'll waste a lot of time and energy recruiting them, and then they'll end up going somewhere else. And maybe I should have recruited someone who is a better fit for me with less competition from outside. Or even if I do get that person, I don't want somebody who's going to constantly be kind of checking out other opportunities and kind of waiting to jump ship, or getting a big outside offer and I'm going to have to try to match it and I won't be able to do so, because if they're asking for too much money or what have you. I want somebody who's going to be happy to work at my firm and going to be productive in the long term, develop firm-specific human capital, invest in the institution and grow there. And the same thing is true of dating markets. If you're looking for a long-term partner, right? You don't just want the person who looks the most attractive on lots of dimensions. You want somebody who actually wants to be with you and be with you for a long time. You want somebody universities want students when they admit them to actually matriculate. We like high yield. We like when we can get students who are excited to be there. So all of these markets have this dynamic. And then the question is, how can you identify that about somebody else? How can you signal as an employee that this is a firm that's going to be a good match? And you set up a nice opportunity to say, look, there's lots of benefits of being here. If you are all about the dollars, you're going to get competitive offers elsewhere. If you're about the stuff that we care about, you're going to choose us. And, some people will and some people won't.
I think it's self-selecting. And that's a lot of the way I think about hiring is, if it doesn't work, it's because it shouldn't. And if you've designed a good process, that reveals itself and you get to the right result.
That is right. That is the goal is a process where you can find the folks who will be the good long-term matches. And, the other thing that I try to focus on is what you have in your control. So I often talk about this from the perspective, I advise a lot of students, undergrad and MBA students. So I talk about this a lot from the employee side, the folks trying to get a job. You can control how good you look as an employee. You can invest a lot of time and energy. But at some point, you are who you are, and there's only so much more you can do to kind of make yourself look, appealing to a firm from the perspective of how good you are. So I talk about putting your best foot forward, but it still has to be your foot. It's not right. You are who you are. So
right.
So at some point that you're kind of stuck on that, but people focus a ton on that. That is basically all that people focus on. What you may not be focusing as much on, but you maybe can control at the application stage, is that other piece of, if the firm goes after me, am I going are they going to be happy with the outcome? Am I going to say yes to the job offer? Am I going to stick around the firm for a long time and be a part of the team that they're happy to have? And the part of the thing that you can still signal on the job market is how excited you are about that job opportunity. The thing that puts the other side of the market at ease, that say, oh, this person actually is a good fit. This is somebody I should go after. Because a lot of firms will smartly put aside folks who they don't think are really good fits, really motivated. You went after this one candidate, but I'm sure there were other candidates who also got great offers from other firms that you had already decided this person is not going to be a good fit for my organization, and kind of had excluded them, from at an earlier point. If they in fact would have been a good fit for your organization, if they did value your platform and could have communicated that to you, maybe that would have been a successful match that got missed out on. But both sides of the market have to do that, have to kind of signal this feeling about the person or the organization that they're matching with, so that that other side of the market can feel confident in moving forward with that.
Got it. So if you're running a, if you're, let's say you're Tim Cook running Apple, you're running a massive global organization, one of the most valuable companies in the world. He's lauded for, his background in operations and being a brilliant operator. Is someone like Tim Cook consciously designing systems, or is he, or somebody like him, is it more intuitive? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think it's a mix. Towards the end of the book, I have a chapter emphasizing that you are a market designer. Here are some markets that, knowing nothing about you, I'm pretty sure that you control. I'll give you an example of one in a second. But I think that folks probably do a pretty good job instinctively on a lot of these. But I'm sure that most people would feel like, oh, actually, I could improve. If I took a step back and actually thought about this role consciously as opposed to subconsciously. And again, I don't know for any given leader. We know there are people, I mean, the data shows there are good managers and bad managers. Good managers, their employees do better. Bad managers, do worse. And bad managers, you can improve the outcomes they get with better systems that are not designed by them, but like come in from outside that help them, assign workers to projects and teams. So, there are better and worse folks. Whether the better ones are thinking consciously about it, I'm not sure. I think everybody would benefit from thinking about it a little bit more consciously. What is an example of a hidden market that everybody controls that they may or may not consciously think about? Well, it's the market for your time and attention. That is a scarce resource that you do not allocate exclusively based on price, although, lawyers maybe more than others are, people are paying for their time. But when you're, not billing hours and you're thinking about, okay, what emails do I respond to? Which meetings do I take? Like, how am I spending my time? Or outside of the firm, like when you're home and you're deciding which friends are my texting back and, what activities am I doing this, today, this weekend? Like, these are hidden markets. You have rules that you are using, whether they are conscious or not. You're deciding which emails to respond to, which meetings to take. I don't know if you are treating the market participants, those who want access to your time, equitably, efficiently, if you're making it easy for them to reach you. For me, I worry about my students. Am I making it hard for my students to get in touch with me? Am I making sure that I'm responding to the most important emails because that would be efficient? Am I making sure that I'm not favoring, some people over others because they know how, when to reach out to me and the other ones like haven't figured that out yet, right? I don't want to favor a subset of them over the others. So, for me, that's something that I think about. And I have one example that I think emphasizes that we often are not conscious of the rules that we use. And so stepping back might be helpful. And that example starts with the way that we allocate historically allocated water from the Colorado River. So the Colorado River we've been using for various purposes for over 100 years. And the way for many, many decades we allocated water in a year of drought when the water level was lower, we said, oh, California, you were the first to tap the river in 1901. You get all of the water that you historically get. You get the level that you get in any given year. We don't care that it's a drought. You have first right to that water. This is called first in time, first in right. California first to tap it, they get the water. City of Phoenix, Arizona, you tapped it much later. You're going to cut back when there's a drought.
Yes.
Of course, in 1901, Phoenix, Arizona had less than 10,000 people in it. And now it's a city of 1.5 million. So it's a little unclear. If you thought about efficiency and equity and ease, like this is not any of those things. It's not efficient. It's not using the scarce resource of the water from the river as efficiently as possible. It's not fair. It always favors California. It's not easy for Phoenix. They don't know in any given year how much water they're going to have or not. So I wrote about this in my book and I was, giving it a hard time, mocking it for being a bad set of market rules. And then I realized, this is the market rules I use when I set recurring meetings for projects. I put 2 p.m. on Thursdays on my calendar and that for that project. And then it's there every week, whether I'm busy in a time drought or not, that hour is blocked off. And if you want to make an appointment with me or we have another project to work on, I have to work around that right that I gave to that project. So, that again, this is not, there are some recurring meetings that are really valuable. I have recurring meetings on my calendar for teaching that are sacrosanct that I would never,
Sure.
that I do want to block off. But my default rule of having recurring meetings was adopting this first in time, first in right market rule that, I thought was a bad idea for the Colorado River. And so to use it for my time was probably suboptimal. So that's just another example of like, if you took a step back and thought about the markets that you control, would you be happy with the allocations that you've set up?
Yeah. Interesting. So let's zoom out and talk about some of the hidden markets shaping society today. I feel like the hidden market for human attention is one of the most consequential markets ever built. And
Yep.
nobody fully understands the rules. Social media has turbocharged that market in a way that no one could have anticipated.
Yep.
Maybe Mark Zuckerberg, but at the same time, we're watching institutions that took centuries to build, democratic governments, international alliances, the rule of law come under attack around the world. It's not
Yeah.
limited to one country. Is that a coincidence? Or is the attention market doing something to our collective ability to defend the things we built?
I would like to think that, we are capable of focusing our time and attention on the things that matter, that actually are helpful. I do think that at least there's lots of research that suggests that the way that social media has kind of hijacked our attention can
Yeah.
have these addictive qualities that are problematic and send you down the rabbit holes that cause you to that
Yeah.
allow for an environment where institutions can break down.
Yeah, essentially we're being not to be sinister about it, but we're being manipulated. I'm fed, if I go on Apple News, the information, the articles that come up, it knows what I'm interested in, and it's going to give me more of what I'm interested in. We all know that. It's not just Facebook or X. It's our news sources, the information we consume, and I think that leads to a lack of perspective systemically that's causing norms to break down and institutions to break down because we don't have a broader perspective.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's also, I kind of think of it as there is a process where if we all are consuming, there's a democratization of like content creation that we haven't seen ever before, as far as I know.
Right.
And so instead of us, and it was gradual, it wasn't just social media, right? This happened with cable channels when it used to just be the broadcast stations, then there were cable channels, and now every influencer has their own kind of following and produces their own content. And there's lots of good things that come out of that. So economists, when we model, welfare, having a diversity of products is good because it might be that you don't like what everybody else likes. It could be that you want a certain kind of tailored news feed that gives you the kind of stuff that you want to read. And you might not get that if you only have 3 broadcast stations that you can watch. But the downside of that is that we don't have as much kind of shared cultural things that are touchstones that we all can agree on. And so, I might speculate that like some of the intense political polarization that we've seen in this country and maybe in other countries is related to that. We are experiencing our own, people talk about echo chambers and things like that. But if we don't all have shared understandings of things, and we don't all agree on, what has happened in the world because we're getting different messages from different sources, we don't have that shared information, then it will lead to conflicts.
Yeah. I guess it's up to each of us to design a system for ourselves. Again, it's like your point about what goes on your calendar. It's up to me, it's up to everyone to decide what information they consume and how they consume it, and to be conscious of the fact that Apple News is giving me 100 articles on a topic that it already knows that I'm interested in, but not giving me all this other stuff for a different perspective, and to go out and try to very consciously consume content that maybe isn't what is,
Yeah.
you know,
There's also, because the algorithm doesn't know if you are clicking on something because you're really interested in it and excited by it, or because it really disturbed you and you had to click on it because like you had an emotional reaction that made you like need to know what's going on. And as a result, you can end up in situations where you're inadvertently kind of teaching the algorithm that it should feed you, the kind of stuff that stresses you out. Like, because the way that, if you are the kind of person who clicks on, resolves the stress of something by like trying to learn more about it, then anytime you get a headline that scares you, you're going to click on it to kind of read and be like, okay, I don't have to worry about this. Now the algorithm is just feeding you those kinds of headlines of like, this terrible thing. You click on it and convince yourself, okay, I don't have to worry about this. And this process isn't new, right? The jokes of like, one of these household items can kill you. Wait till after the commercial to find out which one, right? Like that was
Right.
going on when I was a kid, but that only happened, once or twice, a broadcast, or maybe once or twice a week. Now it could happen every time you open your phone, because if you are the kind of person who will try to, find out which household item, then, you'll get a lot more of those. And so if that is happening to you, right, and that's just one example, but whatever it is, like the things you are getting on your feeds are not actually bringing you joy, but causing you stress, that might be a indication you should be kind of changing up your apps, or, figuring out how to delete your history and start over, something like that.
It feels like the best way to push back on a system that's designed to do a certain thing is with another system.
Yeah.
Your own system.
Or vote with your feet, right? If an app, a social media app's not doing what you want for you, on to the next one.
Yeah. And speaking of voting, it's another thing I thought about a lot in the context of the book, and the research you've done is that politicians are in a hidden market, maybe again, not so hidden market competition for votes, with rules that it's all part of the same thing.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of research on polarization, and I think that is relevant obviously to the voting issue. I think, education, we have this college educated fault line in the country that's dangerous. It's dangerous because, and I guess it's the point of our last discussion, the world is dangerous because you want to be able to make sure you're fully informed, which comes with education. But how do you think about this all in the context of politicians and votes?
Yeah, the information, attention information kind of decision when you are thinking about candidates that you're going to support, for example. Like there's like two stages of it. There's you have a certain amount of attention. Candidates are trying to reach you. We're in the primary period now, so lots of mailers, text messages, just kind of like a barrage of stuff. But the strategic decision that you have to make comes like right as you're entering the voting booth. And so in the book, I kind of talk a little bit more about that point because and people have talked about this before, but it comes to a head particularly with elections, particularly with primary elections, where you have to recognize the fact that your vote only is going to matter if you're voting for, say, one of the two people who is the going to be the highest vote getter. If you are, and people talk about, wasting your vote on a third party candidate, that very well may be the candidate you like the best. But in terms of understanding the hidden rules and trying to achieve an outcome that you want, that's not a good use of that scarce resource of your vote. You would be better off, picking among the two candidates that are likely to be kind of the top of the vote getting. You then, you have a responsibility then, and this is what makes this system kind of difficult for market participants, to actually do research about polling and, about who is a front runner, who is leading in the polls. A story I tell in the book on this relates to the New York City primary election, the one that preceded the one that elected our current mayor, the one that got Eric Adams, the Democratic primary, and he ended up being our mayor for the last 4 years. And that one was one where we actually changed the voting rules to try to make it kind of allow people to express more preferences. We switched to ranked choice voting. And I'm actually a big proponent of ranked choice voting. I think it's a good policy for these kinds of elections because it allows you to say, actually, this third party candidate and, equivalent, and they're all Democrats in this example, but, this person who isn't one of the top two vote getters likely, that they actually are my top choice and I can rank them first. And that's something that you can't do in the traditional voting rules, but you can do in ranked choice voting. And so we had rolled it out for this election, and it turned out that we just did a bad job teaching people how to use this voting rule. And that because a lot of people ranked one person and then didn't rank anybody else. Or they ranked a few people, but they did not list one of the front runners who ended up being, the last two standing. And so these are people who are voting in primary elections. They're very motivated voters. But because we haven't taught them appropriately how to use this ballot, they are essentially not voting in the only race that matters, which in the case of the Eric Adams race was between Eric Adams and Catherine Garcia, were the two last people standing. And Eric Adams won by like 7,000 votes. And there was over 100,000 people or more who had room on their ballot to add either Catherine Garcia or Eric Adams, but did not. Or maybe they exhausted their ballot. Maybe they listed 5 names, but did not include one of these two people who were clear front runners. And so their voice did not get counted. So all of this is to say the way that, these hidden markets work for things like elections, for our decision of who to vote for, or kind of what information to gather about candidates in advance. I mean, it's super important. It has major outcomes on local elections, but also kind of the national elections that we're all focused on right now.
Yeah. And I assume AI upends it's going to fundamentally, obviously, it's not hype. It's changing systems. It's changing governance. It's changing who makes decisions.
Yep.
AI is going to tell us what to do. AI is going to select if you're applying for a job. This is already happening. AI is going to, in the early stages, weed out people, and that's already been happening. But yeah, how do you account for that in this evolving world?
Yeah, this is tough because the promise of AI is that it will make scarce resources less scarce, right? All of these hidden markets that I'm talking about, it's like, the problem is we have a limited amount of hours that we can spend. What are we going to spend them on? And if you want access to my team's time, like, you might have to wait in line with everybody else. If AI can kind of do a bunch of stuff that used to be scarce, well, then we no longer have the scarcity to worry about, and the hidden market goes away. Now, the problem is that that's not really what we're seeing. So at least not yet. What we're seeing instead is that AI is solving some problems and then creating others. So, right, if you're developing code for a company and, right, it used to be that a project manager wanted a bunch of stuff to happen to the app, and then they had to make strategic decisions about which to do first and which to do later, because the scarce resource was the developer's time. Now the developer, can have some AIs do the coding for them or assisting them, and they're getting much faster. But there still might be a human layer at some point of like having to do the code review or having to decide which features actually we're going to roll out. And the bottleneck is not what can we build, but just like how much can individuals handle as we change the app. And so the hidden market kind of moves to another part of the production process. So that's like one thing that AI sure is helping, but it until it like fully automates stuff, there's still going to be humans involved, and there's still going to be bottlenecks. The second thing is that a lot of the hidden markets, like the labor market, which you mentioned, have historically relied on things not being too easy for market participants. So I talk about this in the book, but there's a way that we used to signal solving the problem I described earlier on the labor market of like, I need to signal to you that I actually am interested in your firm, even if you thought I was out of your league or I would be destined for another firm that paid more. And I want to signal to you that actually it's your firm that I want to work at, and you should go after me. One way we used to do that was, particularly in the early stages where we're screening resumes, is writing a long, detailed cover letter. Because that was something that was hard to do. It was hard to write a good cover letter that showed how your interests and backgrounds like dovetailed exactly with the firm's needs. And, you showed that you researched what the firm had been working on and talked about individual people at the firm. And like that was something you didn't do for every firm because it took a long time. And so when a firm saw that cover letter, they recognized, oh, this person actually wants this job. They will accept the job if we offer it, and they'll stick around for a while. When the thing that used to take hours takes seconds because generative AI is writing a cover letter that looks that detailed and thoughtful in a matter of seconds, that is no longer a signal that you can use to screen legitimate interest. That has become what economists call cheap talk. And I have observed this hiring my own research assistants over the last 15 years. Like all the best cover letters have come in the last 12 months. Everybody should get hired. They're all really interested in my research. They've done their homework. But at this point, I can't use that anymore the way I used to, which was to identify, oh, this person really would be a good fit for the job. So I ignore that now, and I have to do other things instead. And so like one consequence of AI in these markets is it's going to force the market participants to develop other signals that cannot be replicated by AI. And this is like another example of the AI solving one problem but creating another. Now there's 1,000 applications for every job. I have an AI screening them, but like the AI is not actually picking the good candidates. Who are the good candidates? They're the ones who are coming, in person to my recruiting events. They're the ones who have a friend and are asking their friend to contact somebody at the firm. They're the ones who are doing the kind of networking on the ground to actually be the ones that I notice, because everybody gets now that like the AI is writing the applications, the AI is screening the applications, and we have to just like create a new way of actually identifying who the right candidates are.
Yeah. The way I process that is the more human dimensions of how you pursue something are even more important than they were before.
AI has ironically made the non-human, it's supposed to replace humans, but it's actually made the human stuff more important.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And I guess to close on this, and we've talked about all these design choices that you make as a leader, as a participant in a system, and how decisions are framed and how they have an outsized impact on ultimate outcomes. If there's one mindset shift that you want leaders to take away from this conversation, one practical kind of way to apply what you and I have been talking about, what is that?
Yeah. I think it's just be cognizant of your role as a market designer. Like, recognize that you will, as we talked about earlier, like, it could be that you're already doing this subconsciously, but just think consciously at various points of, there are a lot of people who want access to something in the firm, a role, a position, a part on a team, working on a particular project. Like, how are you actually deciding who gets that? Are you happy with the rules that you've established? The rules that are either written down or not written down. A lot of times we have market rules that we've adopted by historical accident. Like, somebody thought it was a good idea to have a sign-up sheet for who gets which vacation days off. And that made sense when the firm was small. And now there's like a mad rush that, as soon as it's released, everybody has to claim their vacation days. It's like, that system used to work for you. Now it doesn't. We haven't changed it because nobody thinks about it in this way. And so there's lots of opportunities, I think, to take a step back, look at the markets you've created consciously, subconsciously, by historical accident, and decide if you could improve them on equity, efficiency, or ease.
Yeah. All right. Well, Judd, thank you, Professor Kessler.
Judd is fine.
An amazing conversation. Phenomenal book. Encourage everybody to go out and read it. Lucky by Design. And your research is very interesting. I'm sure there's more to come. And thank you for spending an hour with us and making us think about the world in a different way. That's what we're trying to do here, and just very much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of In Conversation. If you enjoyed it, the best way to support the podcast is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. New episodes are released on Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. For more information on Cozen O'Connor Public Strategies, please visit our website at copublicstrategies.com and follow us on social media.